Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Dr. J.J. Kelley, who's a clinical psychologist living in Berkeley, California. And she specializes in dialectic behavioral therapy, what we call DBT. And she has such a high emotional intelligence. Like, I'm floored by this woman. And it occurred to me when we decided to do this interview that the yogic concept of satyam, one of our 10 commandments of yoga, if you will, it's the second yama, or the second social discipline, the first one being non-harming, and then the second one being satyam, which is, how do I say the truth in a way that people can hear it? How do I actually be authentic in the world and say what I need and set good boundaries after I've processed my fear and my guilt and my shame and my anger? How do I show up and really say what I need to say in the world without intentionally hurting anyone? Although sometimes it will hurt the other person. But I think Dr. JJ, even though she doesn't consider herself a yogi, she has mastered the first two yamas, which are non-harming and speaking your truth. So when you look at those two together and then listen to this podcast, I think you're going to be amazed at how many great things she has to share with us, even though she's never stepped on a yoga mat. She might have, but I'm just saying she doesn't consider herself in the yoga world. And I also want to say, I think we in the yoga world are sorely lacking in these skills. We have the yogis who are repressing everything and spiritually bypassing and pretending everything is light and love and joy, and they're not addressing the real issues inside of themselves and their relationships in society and their communities. But then we also have the yogis that are just going out there and speaking the truth with so much fire that they're burning everything down, and nobody wants to hear it because it's just too painful, because the delivery is pretty awful. And so we've got these polar opposites in the yoga world right now. And what Dr. JJ is bringing to us today is that middle ground, that how do we get honest with ourselves, say what we need to say, and try to maintain a relationship and do it in a way that maybe we'll be heard and maybe some change can happen. And if change can't happen in a particular relationship, be okay with moving on. That's not a failure. If we are moving on after we have tried to work within our value system and get our needs met, if that's not happening, we're allowed to move on without guilt, without shame, without fear, without ruminations, to just say, okay, there's other people out there that may be able to meet my needs when I express them. So I think you're going to love this interview. I look forward to sharing it with you, and let's get started. Welcome to the Yoga Therapy Hour podcast. We're so happy that you're on this journey with us, and we'd like to invite you to a few other activities. Number one, we have a Monday night yoga therapy clinic, and each month we choose a different topic. It's a deep time together, both professionally and personally, and we do offer CE units. So come join us on Monday nights, if you will. We'll see you there, and until then, let's get into our podcast. Good morning, Dr. J.J. Kelley. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Happy to be here.
Do you go by Dr. JJ? Do you go by Dr. Kelley? How do we address you?
You could just say JJ. Dr. Kelley, I like. Dr. JJ, I think is kind of cheesy, but a lot of people like that. So whatever.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with JJ then. My childhood nickname was AJ, so it can be JJ and AJ here. And you're in Berkeley, California.
I'm in Oakland now, but yes, I work the whole at San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland. Yeah.
And you're a clinical psychologist or a Psy.D?
Yep.
Psy.D also considered a clinical psychologist? I think it is, yeah?
Yeah, it's a doctorate in clinical psychology. It's more clinical than academic. PhD is more researchers and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And you were just telling me that one of your areas that you focus in is DBT, which is a combination of Zen mindfulness and CBT. So can you tell us a little bit about that? That sounds fascinating.
Yes, dialectical behavior therapy. Dialectics is just kind of a fancy word for a paradox. So my whole life is the Venn diagram, the two circles that overlap. And, there are a lot of different dialectics there, like the Zen mindfulness meets cognitive behavior therapy. You could say emotion versus logic and where that overlaps. So we're always looking for the overlap, the integration of the balance, middle path, all that kind of thing. We want both of those circles and that sweet spot in between.
All right, that makes sense. Okay, so you have a new book out about narcissism, I understand.
Yeah, well, that's not the newest one, but yes.
What's the newest one?
Well, I just finished the shame book, and that one is in editing, almost done actually. But the anger book is the one that's been released most currently. But people love the narcissism one. Yes.
Okay, but shame, anger, and narcissism. And you're going to make this fun. For those of you who can't see JJ, she's got a hot pink and orange flowered shirt on. She's got beautiful hot pink glasses on. Like, to see you and then hear the shame and the anger and the narcissism. Is that why you're so funny? Is that why you're so light?
Well, humor definitely helps the medicine go down. And, you're a Midwesterner. That's what we do, right? Yeah. I mean, there's something, well, it relaxes the central nervous system for sure. It also connects people. When we're relaxed and we're laughing together, then we're connecting in a way that I think is the foundation for healing. And if we're being real, authenticity is that vehicle for healing. It invites people that I work with to be real also. You don't have to cover up your dark stuff. Let's just laugh about it and work toward change together. I mean, life is hard. This work is hard. Let's be real people together.
Okay, I'm going to be really authentic then this morning. I was listening to a bunch of your podcasts, putting on my makeup and getting dressed and driving in the car. And at first I'm like, wow, this woman, she is funny and loud and a little obnoxious. I was kind of like, whoa, I got to have some caffeine to meet her energy today. And the more I listened and I was driving and I was like, oh, this is somebody I could be so real with because I'm not going to be judged. I'm not going to be psychologized. I started opening up in my car, just feeling like, oh, this would be a good thing because you don't have to hide all the shame.
Oh, I love that. Thanks for saying that out loud. That's it's what I'm going for, but you can't force something like that either, right? You just have to be yourself and let the chips fall where they may. That's the thing.
Yeah, and every therapist that I've been to has been very serious, very kind, very compassionate, very quiet, reflecting back to me and paraphrasing. And it was just like, whoa, this therapy with JJ would probably be quite different, yeah?
Yeah, very, very different. A lot more active, not the glasses at the end of the nose, like, tell me about your mother kind of stuff. How does that make you feel? Although I don't say, how does that make you? I'll be like, and you feel what? We do a lot of naming of emotions because a vocabulary for your emotions increases emotional intelligence, for sure. And everyone thinks they have a vocabulary already. They don't. Geniuses think they have it. They don't. I ask, how were you feeling then? And they're like, good, bad. Oh my, we don't do that kind of binary stuff. Again, it's the overlapping circles, right? And good, bad, stupid. These are not emotions. That is judgment and hardcore judgment. It's the tip of the iceberg of the negative self-talk I know you're doing. Because if it slips out in front of me, where you're already policing yourself because I'm the shrink, right? You want to put your best foot forward. And that's what you're saying. Then I know, whoa, we got to get to happy, sad, angry, ashamed, embarrassed, joyful. People don't have the positive ones either.
It's so true. I don't want to make this about me, but we have a mobile app that helps you get in touch with your emotions and articulate them, the Optimal State app. And people can't do it. They look at the charts and I'm not sure. It's a little surprising, actually.
It's shocking to me daily.
Why do you think that is? Have we not been allowed to express what we're truly feeling without shame and judgment and guilt?
Yeah, I mean, programming from well, family of origin, but society programs them to program us. Families have different emotions that are acceptable and not. Fear wasn't really acceptable in my family, but anger was okay. But a lot of people grow up where anger, stuff, with the
Midwest,
smile.
Midwest nice.
Totally. And so, you grow up just unconsciously being programmed toward certain emotions and away from others. So we have to integrate all of them. Anger is not destructive by nature. It's just an emotion like any other emotion that you need to learn how to healthily manage. And where the hell do we learn that? Nobody teaches us is the thing.
They should start in kindergarten.
Yes, getting it in schools is like my big goal. And that's weirdly hard in the bureaucracy of it all. But just getting a feelings wheel.
Right.
And put it on the fridge and start practicing. That will get you so far.
Absolutely. One of the things I was listening to talk about this morning on the podcast about shame and guilt. First of all, you have very high emotional intelligence. I've been trained as an educational psychologist, and you were saying things that were blowing my mind. So I highly recommend that people read your books and listen to your podcast. But you said in order to look at our shame and or guilt, and I think in the podcast you said, let's leave guilt on the side and just go into shame for a moment. We have to determine if it's justified or unjustified, but that JJ can't tell us. I can't come to you and say, is this justified anger or shame? That it's based on my values. Is that something that I wanted and couldn't have, or somebody stepped over and, so tell us about that, the values and us doing that self-reflection to figure out what our values are to determine if it's justified or unjustified.
Nice question. That's a great question. That takes us right into the pro level stuff. Because first of all, people can't even identify shame. They try to get away from it so fast that they project it onto other people or situations in the form of criticism just to get it off them, right? So identifying it is already a thing. If you have enough emotional intelligence like you to even question, is this justified or unjustified? And again, based on your values, not mine, then those treatment plans are very different. If it's justified shame or guilt, like you went against your values and you feel guilt, then that one's pretty easy. You go apologize. I call it going to eat your shit sandwich with dignity.
Yum.
It's like a humble pie thing, but it got weird along the way. You go and you apologize, you make it up to the person pretty straightforward, and then you let it go. You don't keep berating yourself for the mistake. We all make mistakes. It usually is an accident too, so just let it go after you've apologized. Okay. However, if it's unjustified guilt or shame, meaning you didn't go against your values, yet you still get that hit of shame, that was probably programmed in. And the way to let that go is really different. And it's so funny to introduce this because the thing you do for unjustified guilt or shame is you do that thing that causes it over and over and over again until you increase your tolerance to that distress. It's a distress tolerance skill. That's one of the modules of DBT. So if saying no when someone asks you for something gives you a hit of guilt or shame, upon analysis, you find out you didn't violate any of your values. So why the hell do you have a hit of guilt or shame? Oh, probably programming, particularly as female-bodied people. We're never supposed to say no to anybody. So when we do practice healthy boundaries, we get a hit of shame. Well, that means do it more. Get used to that hit of shame when you say no to somebody if it does not go against your values.
It is so true. When I heard you say that on the podcast this morning, I was like, that's exactly right. There's a different treatment protocol for each if you did or didn't go against your values. And I can attest, in the yoga world, a lot of people will look at the work that you've created over 20 years, and maybe it's true in your field too, And they'll just take that work and put their name on it and pretend it was theirs. So from my perspective, that's an intellectual property. You're stealing someone's work. And at first, when I had to call that out, it would stick with me for weeks, if not months. But I knew in my heart it wasn't right and that I had worked so hard on that. And now I've had to call it out 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times, and it's not a big deal anymore. Now it's like, hey, by the way, did you realize? And the thing that you said this morning when I was listening, and I'm sorry to keep going back to it, but you were profound on these podcasts. You said it has to do with the charge behind what you say. So if you've been pent up and you've been holding it in, and you say the words, please don't do that, versus if you've processed it within yourself and you've worked through it, and you kind of say, hey, please don't do that. Totally different feeling received by the person being told, hey, this is a boundary. So can you talk about that a little more?
I'm not sure which thing you're actually going after there, but I'll take a shot. The first hit I got when you were talking is about how if it's got anger behind it, if you've got the skills to manage anger, it doesn't really matter if you're pissed off when you say it. I mean, I'm often irritated or pissed off when working with somebody, usually when they're using the skills that I taught them to hurt themselves. That makes me pissed instantly. I don't want to be a part of any sort of self-harm thing, but it is part of the job. So I have to get in there and mess with it. But if I just say, okay, now that's pissing me off right now, so please stop doing that so we can move forward. I'm not going to enable this kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't hurt the other person. They may get a hit of shame over it, but that's going to happen when we're uncovering patterns that are destructive. Getting a hit of shame based on a truth that I express doesn't mean I'm hurting them on purpose and I got to apologize. That's part of the gig. So if you're saying something that matches your values, what you don't want to do is get too attached to the outcome.
Right.
How it lands is sort of on them if you have been diligent about expressing from your values.
Right.
We don't hurt people on purpose. We don't weaponize the truth. You got to gut check with yourself whether your anger was meant to slay them or meant to educate. And however they react is how they react. Like if they're pissed off about it, that might have to do with their childhood and nothing to do with you. So people's triggers are their responsibility. If I am a walking trigger, so that's part of my job. It's part of your job. So you're going to project your shit on me. That doesn't mean I got to change what I'm doing. It probably means you got to change what you're doing. You're coming to me for help. So that's part of the thing. But people instantly, when they feel a discomfort of an intense emotion, they automatically want to get it off them because they haven't been trained to hang out with it and use their emotional intelligence skills to move through it. And that's where the work needs to be done, the education there.
Yeah. So I heard you say so many things there. I want to come back to the second part, but let's stay with this right now. What do you do? Like if you recognize, okay, I'm having anger. First of all, I come from a Swedish family. I come from Midwest stock where you're not even allowed to feel that. You're not allowed to acknowledge that exists. You just shut it down. You're just stoic. So I would imagine there's some steps like, number one, feel it, then admit what you're feeling. Do you have some steps for us to even realize that this is happening before we can even process it?
Totally. And that is, again, think of that Venn diagram. Validate before change. Validate before problem solving. Acceptance before change. So validation just means name your emotions. Let it be okay that you're having them. So if you're pissed off, say, at least in your own mind, I'm mad. This is annoying the crap out of me right now. You don't have to say it out loud. I mean, I think that is great to do so. You might want a little practice at naming it before you start saying it to the person because they're going to have a reaction when you say that, right? So just say it in your own mind and let it be okay. It's not validation if you say, I'm mad and I shouldn't be. Should is a major red flag of shame. We don't want to should ourselves. Just eliminate that word from your vocabulary ASAP. Name the emotion, and then we decide what to do about it. So if you're cruising along on baseline, your regular sort of relaxed place when you're not triggered by anything, then something happens and you feel a hit of anger or fear or something, and now you're off your baseline. The first thing you do is name your emotion. We don't want to make any decisions while we're activated. Just naming the emotion brings you a little bit closer to baseline. And now you can think about the problem solving. What do I actually want to do about feeling this emotion? When you're super heightened, you can't think.
Yeah.
You just react. And that reactive actions, those are the ones that cause messes. Those are the ones that cause shame. Then we got to clean it up after that. Plus, we didn't even identify the emotion that got us there. So just slow your roll. Name the emotion. It slows everything down. And then you decide, what do I do? What do I want to do based on my values with this anger that I'm feeling? Well, if you can't think of anything, just take 3 deep abdominal breaths and calm your central nervous system down. That will get you even closer to your baseline. And then you can go, okay, I'm going to just take a walk and think about this. Or I'm going to tell this person, you know what? I need a minute. I'll come back to you in like 10 minutes and we'll talk this out. Okay. And then go and then come back like you said you would. You don't just bail. If you say you're coming back, come back. Couples do this. They need a break, but then they don't come back. And then that person is left with their abandonment stuff, which is what keeps them there in the first place instead of let them take a break, you know? So there are all kinds of problem solving tools in the model that I teach. However, none of them really work without the validation piece first. So just work on naming the emotions first and letting them be okay.
And I've noticed that if I can't get clear about here's what I'm feeling, I need to validate that, I need to name it, I need to digest it. If I just go right in and throw up the boundary when I'm still reactive, the other person never even hears my need. They're just so overwhelmed with my boundary setting in a very fiery dragon way that my message even gets lost because then they focus on the emotion and not my needs.
Totally. It scares them. We're not in charge of not scaring people. However, if there's a motor on what I'm saying, because I haven't gotten regulated, it's certainly going to kick up the defenses of another person. We want to maximize our chances of like effective communication. And that starts with us. Plus, it matches my values to do that. I want to be effective. I want to be kind. And sometimes kindness means calling people out.
Yeah.
Sometimes kindness means stopping them from behaving in a way that will cause them shame by mistreating me. So kindness comes in a lot of forms. It's not just the nice, polite we were taught in the Midwest. You know what I mean? Polite's not the same as true kindness. So yeah, if you're not regulated when you deliver something to someone else, it's going to have a charge on it and it's going to minimize effectiveness in communication.
Great. So I want to go back to the other part of what you're saying here, that if I've done my work, I've acknowledged it, I've validated it, I've named it, I've regulated myself, I come and I clearly speak my needs, and that person has a reaction. I mean, I hate to say this, I'm sorry for anyone who's listening that is offended by this, but I've had this a lot in work situations with older white men. I'm sorry, it's not all older white men, but you know, a lot that I've come into contact with, their reaction to me is first they laugh, then they start making inappropriate jokes. You know, this is over time. Like they don't know what to do with me. They don't like that I've set the boundary, but yet they don't know what to do with it because they've only probably treated women as inferior sex objects or something. And then it becomes hostile. And then they try to kick me out. And then I get ignored and quarantined. Like that usually takes about 9 months. So you're saying like, Amy, don't worry about their reaction, but there's a serious reaction, and to the point where I get almost blackballed from the whole discussion in the first place, or being part of the leadership of a community.
Oh, I so feel you on that. Can you imagine the white boomer straight dude's reaction to me? Like,
No, I can't.
I've had it my entire career. I kind of double down on it because I have learned the emotional intelligence skills, and that includes really effective communication and a whole lot of practice. I have a lot of people reacting. I did therapy for 17 years before just teaching the skills and courses, and it still does it. DBT takes you right nose to nose with all your like borderline-y kind of traits, your narcissistic traits, all your like shadow side, whatever you want to call it. We go right up to that line. So
I need to go get some DBT.
I believe we all need it. It needs to be taught in schools, like you said earlier, so that we know how to manage our reactions to this. But, you're talking about privilege, too. When people sit in a place of being part of a majority group, they're not used to being called out, and times they are a changin'. So I use humor a lot. I use humor shaming as a tool, which is you got to be real practice, strategic, whatever.
That's not a safe strategy for me. I'm sorry.
It might become so, though,
I need to work on it, but what goes through my head should not come out my mouth at this point.
I know. Oh, man. Yeah. But, I like to look at that dark stuff, too, which, again, in the Midwest specifically, in Bay Area, too, though, like no one looks at their dark impulses. They just stuff them down, and then that's where they stay. I think that's the funny stuff. If you like talk to me about the really dark stuff, you don't have to tell the person, I want to punch your teeth out. Like I think, oh man, I'd love to knock your teeth in right now. I think that all the time. There's nothing wrong with thinking it. We can't control what we think anyway. I don't do it anymore.
But that would not be an example of humor shaming.
No. I might be like, oh, look at the CEO. I work with CEOs. I'll be like, hey, boss man, I'm the boss in here. You came here to learn some new shit. So how about we don't keep doing the old stuff? Or I'll be like, oh, right. I have no idea what I'm talking about, which is why you're paying me all this money to help you. Right. You come in here, you know all the answers, right? I'm F me. You know what I mean? Like, I will just say it right out. I've been working with teenagers so long, it's easy to do the CEOs. There's so much acting out, and there's so little checking of people in privilege. So I have the element of surprise on my side, at least the first time I do it. So I'm real careful about the first time I deliver a new thing. I want that to be as impactful as I can. And so I wait and I think about these dark things that I want to say, and I watch their behavior. I rarely say anything the first time someone does something. I wait for the pattern so that I can see what's underneath the pattern. It's usually fear. And then it's covered up with like entitlement. I think what you're saying, you're experiencing is some sort of entitlement. They're like, oh, pearl clutching when you call them out on a shitty behavior that they've been engaging in for decades. Like, are you kidding me? I'm the bad guy for pointing out this way that you just reacted. And I will say that kind of thing too. Like, oh, no, I'm not going to be demonized for setting a boundary for what you just did. What you just did is the point of focus we are on at the moment. We can get to my stuff after, but first we're going to sort this behavior out.
Are you looking for a community that you can be a part of? Well, I think I have just the thing for you. Between all of our listeners on the Yoga Therapy Hour and beyond, plus all of our mobile app users, Optimal State mobile app, between all of you and then the 5,000 people on our newsletter list, we are going to have community get-togethers every 2 weeks in the months of June, July, and August 2025. And we're going to get together on the new moon and the full moon and really set intentions together, both personally, professionally, but also as a community. We're going to meditate, we're going to reflect, we're going to journal, we're going to talk. And these are going to be completely free for the months of June, July, and August. So we're inviting all of you. We'll put the information in the show notes, and we would love to see you join us on the new moon and the full moon in June, July, and August. I know you've written a book on narcissism in the workplace, and this might be a little different than that, but like literally, I have now been removed from the conversation, at least in the yoga world, because I don't know if, I'll call out sexual harassment and they don't like that.
Yeah, too bad.
Yeah, but when you get removed, then you're just removed off doing your own thing on your own island?
I mean, maybe. You have to make a choice based on your values. For me, I'd rather burn it down and be ostracized. But I'm not saying that's right for you. You have to find what's right for you. And does it hurt when that happens? Is it unfair? Hell to the yes, it is. And do I like it? No. Does it piss me off? Absolutely. And then I'll go write a book about it, or podcast. But I did write the book, What Do Women Want? About, the young gentleman's guide to love and partnership. Well, that looks like, how do you get a woman? They all think it's the woman's fault, but that's a prevention of incels and male entitlement. You can't write a book that says, I've been an asshole forever repelling women. You can't, they're not going to pick that one up, So, and that has a lot about the values and how to act according to your values and how to merge this big distance between male and female, heterosexual couples. I think getting used to saying the things that match your values and being brave about it and let the chips fall where they may. I don't think you're going to be ostracized forever. This is just my opinion. I don't know your situation. I just know very much what it's like to be in that situation. And I have had tons of blowback, tons and tons of blowback. And, sometimes those things are like, I don't know what you believe in, spirit, God, the universe. Sometimes that stuff is put in our way to make us go a different direction. And then later you see, oh shit, I didn't want to be there anyway. I was just too scared to leave. I don't want to be immersed in sexism where I keep my mouth shut. What is that going to do to me over time? Yep. No way. I'd rather flip the bird and move on and let them say my God, the things people say behind my back. Thank goodness I don't hear them. Have your conversations. I don't give a shit. I'm just going to move on and help the people that want to be helped. If they're in power and I'm in some sort of lower power position in their mind, like chances are with narcissists in particular, you're not going to change their mind.
Yeah.
Be true to yourself and move on.
And I think what I forget is there are millions of people out there that want the authentic version, that want the person who'll speak up, that will change the power structure. It's like, you're hanging out in the wrong room then. Go over and find your people.
Totally. And it stings, sure. But like acceptance of that sting instead of resistance of the sting makes it easier and shorter.
Yeah.
And then you just go forward. That's the Wisconsin motto, forward. I think about that all the time. It's funny too, being out of Wisconsin for so long, 20, 30 years. It's funny what comes back as you grow older, those early memories and the forward on the flag. And I remember seeing Rita Moreno in a one-woman show a few years ago, and she kept saying the word forward, moving. Just keep going, just keep swimming, like life is long and it's short. There's that dialectic again, like people come in and out of your life and things change and we change. The snake shedding its skin so many times in life. And, that hurt won't last forever.
why do we take life so seriously? When I hear you saying this, I'm like, yeah, just shed the skin, just move forward. People come, people go. But then if I get honest with myself, there's people that I had falling out with 10 years ago that I still bring up in my head and ruminate on. Like, it's so much easier said than done.
It is easier said than done, but it's not as hard to do as people think. They just don't do that kind of work because who would have taught them to do it? Right. And I would say if someone from 10 years ago comes up in your mind, name the feelings that you have. The thing is, that kind of thing comes up, and then we're like, no, I don't want to think about that. That was 10 years ago. There's a should in there. I shouldn't even be worried about this. Well, maybe something happened today that brought up that old pain, and maybe that's there to teach us something. The resistance of pain is what prolongs it.
Right.
We're not going to die from that. You know how many people that I continue to love and they're not in my life?
Yeah.
Like if I focus on that, that would be a source of pain over and over again. I let it come up when it does. I don't sit there going, I teach emotional intelligence skills. I shouldn't be having any pain about this. Like that's not how
I should be friends with everyone.
Right. I mean, no, I don't want to be friends with people that hurt me consistently. And then when I bring it up to them, they say I'm too sensitive, or they gaslight in other ways, demonize me. Well, you did this. Like, no. Resolution of a conflict needs two willing participants. I sense that the other person is not in earnest trying to resolve our conflict, then I know to walk away. It's taken many decades to figure that one out. Walking away is hard. You see me, I'm active. I want to work on things. I want to change things. I want to get in there and fix it or whatever. And if you don't have another willing participant in that resolution, it will not work. They will move the goalposts. They will demonize you. They will try to talk you out of your reality, gaslighting, and gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse. It's not just a word on social media. That is psychological abuse. If someone is abusing you, it is the healthy thing to walk away.
And even if you're in a conflict and someone is just blaming and shaming you and saying, it's not me, it's all you. I mean, it's always two people. And right. They're just inherently saying, no, it's your problem. You already know.
Yes.
It's going to be a gaslight.
Yes, you don't have a willing participant in that resolution, and it's time to walk away.
And I always say, is this something we could talk about? Is this something we can work through? And if they say no, then I just say, best wishes. Yeah. Moving on.
Yeah. If they even say no, a lot of people are going to say yes because they want to be perceived as a good person. There's that binary again. Good, bad, right, wrong. We don't do that. It's on a spectrum, but they want to be perceived as like the high road person. So they'll say yes, but then they'll engage in a bunch of destructive behaviors. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
And you got to go with your gut on that too. Not that you don't analyze it with your head, but your gut knows. You get that no or that ick in your gut, and it's telling you something.
Okay, JJ, we have about 5 minutes left, and I'm looking at you going, wow, you were the therapist I needed my whole life.
That's the therapist I needed.
How did you get so honest with yourself? Because you couldn't say the things you've said today if you weren't in 100% honesty with yourself, whether that's reality or not reality. We're not going to discuss that because we all have our own reality. But you have figured out your values, and you are honest and willing to put yourself out there and take the blowback. Like, how did you do that?
I think the best answer to that is practice. I mean, probably pain and practice. You don't get skilled, you don't get funny, I don't think, without pain. I think that's why Midwesterners are so funny, too, is because we stuff all that, or we're taught to stuff that. And then we are like, ha, ha, ha about it. I mean, I try to teach people not to stuff, but I don't think humor is just a defense. I think it is a healing tool also. But I do think you have to make a list of what your values are. I think you have to discipline and train yourself to name your emotions. And I think the ultimate thing is courage. I think you have to be brave to say your truth over and over again. And you can feel it in your body. This is what's so great about yoga and other mindfulness meditation, these kinds of things, because you have to be with yourself. We spend so much time not alone and not quiet.
Yeah.
And therefore avoiding developing our relationship with ourselves. I think you need that. We're the only one we're with all the time. We got to take the time and the care to develop a relationship with ourselves. I think that takes place in silence. I think it takes place with discipline. That's not a word that people like, but that just means practice, and it means integrity enough to not give yourself bullshit excuses. Inside, I know when I'm like, oh, wait, this isn't even remotely true. And I used to keep going, right? Because you got to win that fight. You're in an argument and it's heated, so you got to just keep going. As a young person, I did that all the time. And then I felt crappy after, there's the shame. And it's like, now I'll just be like, wait a second, I'm not even sure that what I just said was true. Hang on, let me think for a second. I do that all the time. And people are afraid to do that because they think it's going to reduce the person's respect for them or whatever. The opposite is true. Just like naming emotions. If I say I'm afraid, it's going to go through the roof. No, the opposite. If you say you're afraid, it actually diminishes the fear. You try it. You will feel that. Everything we think, it doesn't make it true just because we think it. Practice it. Try it. Write down your values. Act according to your values. Have the courage to admit how you're currently acting that does not match your values. That's the real trick. Just go back this week in all the ways you felt crummy after you said something. It was either because of lack of courage to say your truth, or you said too much because you've been stuffing.
Yeah.
If you're ruminating at night, I get this with women a lot. If you're ruminating at night about like what you should have said, blah, 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 that's anger, baby. That is anger. Go figure out what you're pissed off at. Even write out the conversation, how you wish it would have gone, how you're going to do it next time. If you had a do-over, what would you say?
Yeah.
And then commit to saying that next time. Or do the really dark one and then move it to, hey, what matches my values? You got to practice that. You got to write it out. You got to say it to yourself in the mirror so you can get used to the fear that goes with it at first.
This is really deep work. And I think that's what's striking me about you is you're willing to go to those dark shadow places in order to suffer less. Like, let's go there. We can work through it. And the end result will feel a whole lot better.
Yes. It's the only way I know that works. We have all tried, myself included, under, around, over. The only way is through. That's the only thing I've ever found over the 20 plus years. And then my own before that. That's the only thing that works is getting in the muck to get out of the muck permanently.
Right. All right. Well, you have a variety of ways people can connect with you. And your website is www.drjjkelley.com. And that's JJKELLY.com. And you have 5 books up here, but you're also saying you have one you're just finishing writing. So I just want to read off the book titles. Holy SHIT, My Kid is Cutting. Holy SHIT, I'm a Gifted Misfit. So this is the Holy SHIT shit. Oops. This is the Holy Shit series, by the way. I'm Dealing with a Narcissist. What Do Women Want? Which is the one that is basically helping men figure out how to treat women, if I'm hearing you.
Oh.
So this is Anger. And then what's your newest one?
It's about shame. Yes.
This is amazing. And another thing that I thought was really cool on your website is you actually have group DBT courses. So tell us just a brief bit about that, because maybe someone can't, or for whatever reason doesn't want to go through weeks and weeks and months of therapy, but you could do it in a group setting, it sounds like.
Yeah. And, if you need it to be individual, it can be, but I'm more toward the group now just because of time restriction. And actually, group stuff is so great. You get so much more bang for your buck when you hear other people doing it too. But the Gifted Misfits book is the 8 weeks of DBT course in book form. So the courses are 8 weeks. You watch my teaching videos. There's all the cursing. Although we did go through and edit, like bleep out so that we could get it into schools. So that should be funny. But yeah, it's teaching videos. And then we meet, you do the homework, and then you tell me the homework. And then as I learn about you, I get to tailor these homework exercises for you, your life, your values. That's why DBT works. We don't just talk about it. We don't just read about it. We practice. It's the practice that leads to changed behaviors. You got to engage in the new behaviors. You have to be encouraged to be brave enough to try the new behaviors. That's what it is. It's fear. So I go back to all the stuff that's not working. It's like the devil kind of thing. So the encouragement, the fun, the laughing about the stuff we do we know doesn't work. Well, what might work? What are you willing to try? It's fun.
And are these online? Great.
Yep.
I also love this idea that I could come into a group with strangers that don't have any impact on my daily life. I'm not going to see them at the grocery store, so that I can be authentic and real and let that shadow side out, because It's not going to impact. I'm not going to run into them at church or wherever I go,
And it's all over the world. So you get exposure to different ways that different cultures influence behaviors and even emotions as well. So I think that's really valuable.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm really appreciative that you took this time. And I hope that our listeners will check out your courses and your books. And thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Thank you, Dr. Kelley, for being with us today. It was really enlightening. There are so many things touched on between fear and shame and guilt and anger and setting boundaries and getting in touch with your own values and speaking your truth. Those are all things that I feel like we don't want to do that work. That's the dark work. That's the hard work. It's so much easier to focus on high vibration and let's feel good. And I don't want to get lost in the fear and the shame and the guilt and never come back out, but it has to be addressed in order to have transformation and change and move into a different way of being. Just like JJ said, you have to practice this stuff. You have to get good at it. You have to be courageous and bold and brave and work on it. It's a skill just like riding a bike. And so that's one thing that really came home for me today is just because it feels bad the first few times you try to do it doesn't mean it's the wrong direction. It may actually be the right direction. You're just not used to it. And as long as you're doing your inner work and you're showing up authentically and giving it your best shot and admitting when you screw up, hey, we all have that. But I think, as she said, it will get easier and easier. And then the second little tidbit about what she said really ties into the work that we're doing at the Optimal State. And that is becoming aware of the body sensations that we're feeling, figuring out what emotional words go with those body sensations, getting in touch with our own self and admitting to ourselves that we're having these hard emotions and putting words to them and kind of working through it. So that's where the Optimal State app 2.0 comes in. You have 6 charts in there from body sensations. There's these little wheels that you can press on and say, okay, I'm in this zone or that zone. We have body sensations, we have mental emotional chart, we have pain, we have all sorts of charts that you can track it and then get feedback about, number 1, here's an intervention you could use to work through that within yourself. And number 2, you can see your own data that's only shared with you. Nobody else is going to see it unless you want to send them a screenshot of your summaries. But basically it says, hey, usually in the morning, you're having all these really negative thoughts. Or, before you go to bed, it appears you're in this zone quite often. And here's something you could do for that. So exactly what she said, that is the point of the Optimal State app. And it's for iPhone and it's for Android and it's free for the first month. So Get in the stores, the app stores, and download it. All right, have a great week, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's only because of you that we are here, and we love to be with you every week. All right, thanks so much. Thank you for listening to the Yoga Therapy Hour. We hope that you enjoyed this content. Much of what we talk about goes right into the other work that I do. One of the really exciting things coming up soon is a program that I'm running with Mala Cunningham called Mental Health, Neuroscience, and Yoga, a peer counseling certification training. There'll be 2 parts. One of the parts will be online, and the second part will be in person. And at the end of this program, you will be a certified peer counselor who knows how to be in relationship with respect to mental health, neuroscience, and yoga. It's a 2-weekend program, and we can't wait to invite you to learn more about it. If you're interested, go ahead and email welcome@theoptimalstate.com. Again, welcome@theoptimalstate.com, and Mala and I will get back to you to let you know the dates and locations of the program. All right, I hope you'll join us. Let's talk soon. A special thank you to our team here at Optimal State. We are truly a global family. George Mantuan, one of our executive producers. Adam Satchel, senior media producer and sound engineer from the Philippines. Krishna Panchal, a producer from Canada. Modupe Abdullahi, who does the show notes and is an editor for us from Nigeria. And Peter Morley, who wrote and produced the music for this show, who lives in Australia. Find more about Peter's work at www.zenmusic.biz. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.